Morning.
Hey, Bill, how are you doing?
Oh, that's always a can of worms. But I'm gonna start. I know you're recording, but I'm gonna start. You'll need to do a little talking. I'm gonna take my blood pressure. Got my blood pressure cuff right here. I'm feeling a little like maybe it's high, but as if you can feel your blood pressure, right?
I can absolutely feel my pulse. I can feel for myself a state of activation typically, like how easy is it for me to take one breath or two breaths and feel calm? And sometimes that is easy, and sometimes it's really hard, where I just feel no, it's like there's still a lot of energy pumping, pumping somewhere.
Oh, uh, that's a pleasant surprise, actually. I keep a spreadsheet, so I'll put that in later. It was high this morning. Anyway, when I first got up. How are you doing, my friend?
Um, I guess it's also a can of worms. So
Karma.
so many things already going on for me this morning where I feel, yeah, I feel some prickly sensation of like, ooh, my consciousness could get running into those directions right away and maybe even fall down a rabbit hole into all kinds of funny, funny places.
Yeah, I think rabbit holes are get a bad rap. I think that rabbit holes can be really interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes
Uh,
some other interesting stuff has fallen down and you go into the rabbit hole and there it is.
so, any particular rabbit holes you feel
No,
some
I have a curiosity. Do you have any kind of script or question?
not really. Um, I I have memories of past conversations with you that would suggest to me some potentially interesting avenues to walk down together. But no, I don't. I certainly I don't have a written script where I would say, here's the 8 questions for Bill.
I'm going to say like pick your rabbit hole. So
Um,
we had talked earlier about the word friendship itself and how it's pretty complicated concept actually.
it
At
is.
least for me, I think maybe some people think it's simple. I know that some people think it's simple. Some people think, well, you're either my friend or you're not. That's just like it's a binary thing to them. I
And
see
what
a multi-dimensional continuum.
when people say it that way, what do you think are they referring to?
My imagination is that their concept of friendship is actually pretty shallow. And it's a relatively low bar, and it's just like um, it makes it a simple decision for them. You either over the line or not.
And what does it give people when for them? Because it is like even just like thinking about it, I find it fascinating to be putting myself into that position, imagining, okay, I only have friend or not friend, and that is the extent to which I think about this concept.
Right.
As a consequence of putting someone into the friend bucket. And of course, they may be a undecided bucket. Okay, not friend, friend, undecided. Okay, someone is in the friend bucket. And then what? What does that provide me with in terms of decision making?
Well, again, interesting exercise in reaching over into these minds that I don't really want to be in. I don't think it's a decision process. I think they think of it as a state. That is, they kind of live, and there's a bunch of people on them, and these people are in the state of friendship or not friendship, but they don't make a decision. They don't give it a lot of thought. It's not a thoughtful process. And the friends are the people that they tolerate hanging out with, or maybe like hanging out with. And the not friends are the people that they avoid or don't want to talk to, or or a problem at work or whatever. I don't know. There's a line. I think for them, if they thought about it, the unknowns would just be the people they hadn't met. I think for these people, pretty much anyone they've met falls into one of the two categories.
Yeah, at least, like obviously, I think if there's a line, you can still be further away from the line. That is to say, you can be more
No, no, it's
securely
black and white.
uh,
These people
with
are
regards to my behavior. But
okay.
like, I still assume that those people still have some people where if the person behaves other than what they might expect from someone who is in the, let's say, friend category, where they let some people get away with more than others. I still would imagine that that's the case, right? But where, sure, I see someone as a friend, but then the person doesn't want to drive me to the airport. I'm like, okay, you're off the list.
Well,
Whereas
you have standards.
or whatever it is. But I agree. For me, the way that you describe it and that I now imagine this might work for those people is a little bit like food items, where like I either like pizza or I don't like it, or I have never tried it. But once I try something, it's either in the I like it or I don't like it group. And then there are some foods that I like so much, even if I have one bad experience with it, I will still give it another chance. Whereas I might like, let's say, uh, um, cabbage prepared in an Indian manner because I've had it twice or three times. So yeah, it tastes okay. And then I go to an Indian restaurant, I get food poisoning, and I'm like, okay, never again, right? But I've had chocolate cake 100 times, and it's one of my favorites. And I go to a confiserie, I get a chocolate cake. Something is wrong. I can even tell. Okay, not this chocolate cake, but chocolate cake in general is still fine, right? So I think it's a binary, but
Right,
it's still like
right,
with regards to my choices down the line is somewhat nuanced, but it is in the description. It is a binary. Do I like chocolate cake? Yes or no?
right. Yeah.
And now let's expand from there to a more nuanced
But,
positioning.
but I wanted to throw something out because it occurred to me that, I mean, we're only a few minutes in, so things could change, but we have a working title, which is People Are Pizza.
Well, some people are definitely as delicious as pizza for me. That's for sure.
Some people are crusty like pizza. Okay.
Is there cheese in the crust? No, okay, okay, okay. Too far, too
Too
far. Oh
far,
my
too far.
goodness.
So have you got a question or something? Where were you headed before I derailed you?
No, but so to really expand it from the binary, what is friendship for you or for people where you feel it is much more complex and nuanced?
Okay. I'm gonna put a pin in that just for a second because I'm going to the other extreme. This is, they have these I don't know, I've never taken a philosophy course. Probably should. Probably be well, it'd be fun or it would give me a headache. I'm not sure. One of the two. But I know that sometimes they ask, or ethics, they ask questions like, you're on a lifeboat, right? And there's only one life preserver and it's sinking. And you're there with, with your wife and your mother. Who gets the, life preserver, right? Not, no, these impossible questions, right? You're laughing, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And and so here's a question that in my older ages actually occurred to me. I'm taken to hospital and there's something terribly wrong. And the nurse comes in and says, you really don't have much time. You've got time for one phone call. Who am I going to call? It's the, it's the priority thing. This is the
Mhm.
thing about friendship not being binary, is that if it's a multi-dimensional thing with axes and people are placed further or not further along certain axes, then there should be an answer. Who is further along the notification on impending death axis, right?
This it's an interesting paradox for me because I think the person that I would likely call not being in the situation so that I can actually think about it because, lying in the hospital,
Right,
whatever the reasons that I only have 10 minutes left, I'm not sure how clearly I could still think in that moment. But given that right now I feel I can more clearly think, I imagine I would try to call the person who I would have the greatest regret not clearing something up with. A little bit like the friend that you mentioned who didn't tell you that she was indeed in that situation. And
right.
right, so with who would I imagine it would be the most regrettable if that person didn't get to at least still say whatever they need to say in those 10 minutes. And of course, I can then imagine, okay, that happens. I do that. I pass away. And then someone who thinks of me or of them as my best, as we're best friends, and I didn't call that person.
Right,
What's
right,
what's that what's that person then going to think? So it is a bit of a dilemma all in of itself, not with my mother or with my wife. I'm gay with my husband.
right, right.
But yeah, and like these kinds of impossible to resolve questions, in part because I can't predict the future. Um, I might also say I'm not going to call anyone. If I have 10 minutes left, I don't want to have someone for the last 10 minutes yell in my ear, keep fighting, or whatever they
Yeah,
might want to say.
yeah. Don't give up. Why did I push you out? So, but you know your mother better than I do. Uh, I find this an interesting exercise, which you can cut off at any time because I've already mind gamed it some. So let's say, because it dovetails with some other things, and I think some important friendship reasoning. So let's say I call the college classmate that I regret not having closer ties with, rather than um, my fiance or spouse or whatever. Because I kind of assumed that, well, I'm at peace with my spouse. We know each other. We're on firm ground, and they're gonna grieve, but they don't need this last call. But I got unfinished business, if you like, or just like wanna there's something to do there. There's something to resolve, maybe, or have closure, as we call it, which is kind of a cheap way out.
Mhm.
Because closure, again, is a very complicated concept, maybe. So, and I've rationalized that too in other ways. In different, slightly different scenarios, I get bad news, but it's not imminent. But who do I tell first? And a phone call to my college classmate would probably happen first, and then I get back from the doctor's office and I have a face-to-face talk with my partner. Okay. So, does that mean something about the level of friendship? I don't think so. That's a different process. So, how about this other thing where people write stuff down, right? Put it in an envelope and they give it to a lawyer, and on the outside it says to be opened upon my death. And this is the stuff wanted to get off your chest about something or whatever. All right. This is maybe sort of classic TV drama type thing.
You're not trying to make me tear up intentionally, I hope.
No, no, not
Good,
intentionally,
good.
but if you do, I'm working my magic. Um, but the thing is, when I think about that, then I think it through. I think, what the hell? What good does it do to do that after I'm dead, not get any feedback? The person learns something about, me or our relationship that might have been useful while I was alive. What am I, hell am I thinking? But then when I go to the other extreme, right? Because I'm an extreme kind of guy from our planet. I think, well, why am I not saying this today? What is holding me back, right? What's the worst, as my mother would say, what's the worst that can happen? And so that's an interesting thought process for me, where then I come up across the obvious, like, well, is maybe someone I feel really close to, and I say that I can talk to them about anything, but in fact, my fear of the loss of attachment is great enough that I don't dare bring up certain topics. And what does that say? Does that mean that it's not really an authentic feeling that I feel that I'm really close to this person if I can't, I can't broach this one or two topics? What does it say? So my mind goes through a lot of those
Mhm.
rabbit holes or circles or, whack-a-mole or whatever, right? You know. So
Any
what
of
what do you
these that
think?
feels,
What do you
yeah,
think?
it's I can resonate or like feel the allure of a number of rabbit holes there. So let me pick out the one that for me is maybe the most juicy or like smells the nicest to go down. Um, if I'm not telling a person that if anyone were to ask me, "Oh, how do you feel about this person?" Yeah, I feel really close. I feel really kind of we're besties. We're best buddies. And yet there are things that I am not telling this person. Yeah, well, what's going on there? Yeah, so what's going on for me? And it could be a number of things. By now, given what I have in the past disclosed to people and how that went and how my experience with it has gone, especially in the last few years, I generally don't think it is about I am afraid that they would abandon me. That is no longer, for me, the
Right.
primary thing going on, but it can go on. And in fact, with at least one person who really is a very, very close friend of mine, in my experience at least, yeah, there was a bit of a shock moment, like about 2 years ago, where I had this experience. Oh my goodness, what if he's slipping away? And where it did hit me pretty hard for a couple days, and then it resolved. But instead, so I'm not telling someone that I say I'm really close to, I'm not telling that person something, let's say my husband. What is going on for me? And I think it has more to do with my estimation of how I imagine they will be able to play with that, to integrate that, to deal with it. And if I feel I haven't figured out a way of saying it where I feel at least some sense of like that is going to be good for them, I probably don't want to do it.
Hmm.
And so, for instance, if I notice a good friend is doing something that I feel, in my estimation of
Yep.
who this person is, what their situation is, where they may want to go, what their skills, capacities are, what the risks are of the consequences of that, what they are doing or what they want to do. And I really feel on balance, my understanding of the situation is if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't do that, or I would do something else. And yet I may not say something. And I think it has to do, yeah, with me really still evaluating it moment by moment. Not even what is my role as a friend, but how do I fulfill that role optimally? And still learning, very, very much learning. How do I tell a friend something like that? Because it's not an easy thing to do in a way where the person feels the only horse that I have in the race is your well-being. That is the only thing I care about.
Right.
Because the person may have gotten so many messages from other people who have criticized that behavior. And it is in part that they do that behavior almost to prove to themselves, I can make up my own damn mind.
Or it's a compulsion they can't control anyway.
Or something, right? And
Yep.
let's really make this about, okay, I have a really good friend and I think they drink too much. And I really think that.
Hmm.
Will I go to them and be like, yeah, you shouldn't be drinking? Well, probably not that way, because then they may just decide, yeah, that's not a good friend for me. Okay, it's like then I lose every access, right? If the door closes, is that what I wanted? And here's the thing, there are probably some people, not necessarily, but like I imagine Jordan Peterson style people who might say, yeah, but the truth is still better because if he loses you as a friend, maybe that's going to be the lesson. And maybe he's right. I'm not saying that that person is wrong. All I'm saying is it's not my style.
Right.
My style is much more, how do I figure out a way of communicating to this person without it being a demand? Here's what I see going on in your life. And
Hmm.
I imagine that a reason why you are drinking is whatever I think the reason is. And it really hurts me to see that.
Mm. You know,
And of course,
when I hear your story, I just like I want to solve the problem myself. I want to give you unsolicited advice because I feel that. So and I know you got a brain. So I think you're like, for example, and you're thinking like, what is driving this? You're ahead of your skis, as they say, right? Whatever. I mean, the first here's the brainstorm or whatever. For me, the first thing is like in some correct reasonable situation, it's like, do you really need another drink? I'm concerned about how alcohol is affecting your health. I mean, my feeling is you need to get the person first to feel that, oh, there's a reason to think about it. It's too soon to even come close to the topic of why do you do it. First, they have to recognize that it's a behavior that maybe they want to modify. That's just me. And that's not the same. That doesn't mean you don't feel that it's good behavior or bad behavior and that it's harming them or whatever. It just means you're taking hopefully a more optimal approach to herding that cat to the right place.
in my understanding, imagination, in
Mm-hmm.
my simulation, as I simulate this with different people that I can think of, my prediction is that different people will respond differently to different approaches in the sense where some people would actually appreciate you literally telling them you're a motherfucker for drinking so much. And they would rather have it heard or like
Sure,
been
sure.
spoken that way. Just because all of this like psychologizing, if not to say pathologizing or any kind of softness around it, would be considered, oh, you're one of those coach therapy kind of guys. You're just trying to talk me into crap. If you have an opinion, just give me your fucking opinion and be done with it. Don't give me this kind of mumbo jumbo, stupid bullshit about like how bad something is from you. Like, just like tell me stop doing it. And that's the way that they want to be told
Mm-hmm.
that. Whereas other people, if you talk to them that way, they think you are their authoritarian father and don't talk to me like that, right? So like,
Right.
and so for me, part of friendship itself is to figure out where are the landmines in the other person's psychology that if I step on it, it really will not lead to any opening on their part, but to really kind of understand this person is someone who, yeah, if I talk like a coach or therapist, they want to slap me because they have been talked to that way so many times by people with an agenda. And
Mm.
each time it sets off this kind of spidey sense of that's not an honest conversation.
Right.
That's an asshole.
Right. Right.
It's the pizza. Is that person pizza or not? And I want to be pizza in that moment, right? I don't want to come across as this kind of bleh. And whatever that is, that stimulus that is like, I want to vomit because someone talks to me in a certain way. is different for everyone.
Right, right. Oh, of course. Yeah, every relationship is different. So I just tossed out an idea because I was imagining a scenario in my head of your attempting to have this conversation with someone.
Yep. Yep.
While you were talking, I had a bizarre idea, and it intersected with an old memory. So you have a difficult message to deliver someone. You hire someone else to deliver the message. Now, and this is what I did once, and this was meant as humor, but it created a huge firestorm. I hired a big chicken to come to a Christmas party at the company at which I worked, and they were instructed to run around and say, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling," and then leave. Okay. Now, the fact is, I was aware that upper management was having some kind of serious meetings about the future of the company. So this was maybe not too subtle signal that other people know. And in fact, within a month, the majority of the people in the company, including myself, were laid off. After, the lavish Christmas party that had already been arranged for and paid for, with money that they didn't really have. So yeah, hire a chicken to, knock on the door with with a bottle of sparkling cider. Okay. And say, you really should be drinking more of this and less alcohol. It's just a wild Bill idea.
No, and I I love it for many reasons. One is it really has this flavor of there's something really important I want someone or some people to know, but I don't want it to be mixed up with the precise channel or with the precise mechanism of delivery or anything. And of course, I still want it to be effective. So it needs to be enough attention grabbing. I cannot just send an email that everyone may ignore or something, right? It needs to be, and you could have hired someone who flies outside of the window of the party with a plane that has a banner saying like this company is going down, right? And then people would have been like, oh, do you see that? And it was same effect, right? So like for me, the exact method of delivery is then less important than the separation of the message. And I'm not the one who's sending it, but it clearly is like whoever is sending it has put enough effort into this for me to take it seriously. This is probably not a joke. And if I can accomplish those things in that manner, fantastic. If I have marital problems, I don't think I would want to hire a chicken that knocks on my door and does little dance in front of my partner, saying like, divorce, 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 or something. It's just like, okay, that's maybe not exactly the method I would choose in that particular case.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole best not visited. But by the way, I like the fact that you kind of turned the idea into something interesting. I don't know, a follow up. So I think in my mind it was for the other employees and the sky is falling sort of phrase really is often like a false alarm, right? It's like the boy crying wolf when there isn't a wolf. Like you run around saying the sky is falling when it really isn't falling. That's what Chicken Little does. And so we're hoping that management is persevering, are perseverating about something that turns out to be not important, but want to deliver in a humorous way to all of my fellow employees.
Yeah.
That whatever. Now, the fallout of this, by the way, was I did this
Yeah, I
anonymously, and they tried very hard to figure out who had sent the chicken. They never did figure it out.
until today.
Uh-oh, my secret's out. Well, I didn't tell you the company.
Well, it's plausible deniability. You can
Well,
always
the
say,
company
well,
company doesn't exist anymore anyway.
someone else told you the story and that person did it, and you just like it so much, tell it
No,
as though you did
I'm
it.
going to own up to it. I did it. I did it. It was my brilliant idea.
No, but I imagine the fallout can also be, different people, because it could be that your colleagues might say after the layoff, why didn't you send this less cryptic? And the management might say, why didn't you come to us and tell to and talk to us directly or whatever, right? So like everyone could have different reasons for being upset. And
Sure,
ultimately,
sure.
you could also have decided this is actually not the message for the people who will be laid off. This is the message for the management to say, you guys are idiots if you think this is a secret, right? There's so many ways in which people can interpret this message, and that's why I love it. It is very subversive, almost postmodern. It's a postmodern South Park kind of gag,
Yep.
where but the important thing is that even though people may not take it seriously when they see the message,
Yep.
I feel quite confident that it creates in people an unconscious process of what if? How much time they then devote to this, not in their conscious thinking, but and with they devote, I don't mean again people choosing to think about it, but how
Right.
much time their subconscious is working on this is outside of my control, your control, anyone's control. But I think it is at least worth sometimes sending a message like this that
Yeah.
says this this is something that is in the realm of the potential futures. Have that on your radar.
Mhm. I'm not sure what that has to do with friendship.
Um, well,
I got off on the message delivering thing, like delivering difficult message um, thread,
no,
rabbit
but quite
hole.
honestly, I would say that a lot of the times when people don't share cat videos or fluffy otter memes with people on the internet, but they share a kind of like meme about something that they feel, oh, Bitcoin is going down, or what I think all of these messages that, especially if you share them with individuals, I think they have that quality. There is a certain quality of like, I want to point out a danger, and I don't know how else to do it other than with this stupid meme that I
Hmm.
found that conveys this to me, like Chicken Little saying the sky is falling, and I'm passing it along to you for you just to consider. Have you thought about what makes you safe in the future? Right? And it's not a specific message, but the message is just like, I feel I want my friends to be aware, yeah, the future is uncertain, period.
Right.
And that's okay, right? Every once in a while to at least just share, don't be too sure about the future, guys. And especially if you think you're surrounded by people who think, oh no, it's all rosy, champagne. Exactly, champagne for everyone. Roman decadence. And then you just point out, yeah, maybe not. I think that that has a lot to do for me with friendship because, yeah, I want also people like that in my life that in any domain where I'm too cocksure of my like choices, they gently nudge me, but like, yeah, here's something going on I think you should know about. Here's the article about uh jumbo mortgages that or like the next financial crisis that I read. So like just give it a read and see what happens to your mind after reading.
Right. Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that all of the colleagues that you sent the chicken to were your friends.
Well, is it not something? I was really just suddenly thinking, well, they were, and then um, in some respects, they were my children. I was the senior member of engineering department. Everyone looked up to me. I didn't have my title that was much higher than everyone else's, but everyone knew that I had the ear of the senior VP of engineering and that, you know, that I would be taken seriously when they wouldn't. If they had an idea that I passed along, that it would, would be more likely to be adopted. If someone was, whatever it is, I was the guy. I'm the, proverbial wrong role, but like the secretary behind the powerful person who actually, does all the scheduling, knows everything, and actually has the ear of the boss. Is really the influence. And so these kids were there. They were younger than me. They were kind of like under my wing, and it's again we use the word funny too much, but when I got called into the office of the VP, you know, for the conversation, and he says, "Well, um, you know, uh, we're we have a budget crisis, and I had to lay people off, and honestly, it's between you and me, and it's going to be you." And we were laughing, but yeah, of course you're gonna, and he said, but of all the people I'm talking to today, you're the person I'm least worried about. I know you're going to land on your feet. I'm really worried about the others. And I felt, with him, we were together at that moment, even though he's laying me off. We both had a concern for coworkers who we really cared about, that were friends, um, and how they were going to manage, in this situation.
And in a way, this I I cannot say if that's the way that your mind works, but
Good.
the hypothetical that you brought up with the single life preserver and the mother and the wife. Imagine it's two best friends. And if you have one or two, but not three, right? And so what do you do? And yeah, I think that friendship, it's it's not that I would say it has a fuzzy boundary, but there are clearly like boundary conditions, just like with almost every experience or with every value, with every longing that I have, that it reaches a cliff at some point. And I certainly hope that in my life I will have as few of those cliffs as possible, where it just feels like an impossible decision to make. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Where no matter what I choose, it seems to me I have to betray one of my values because fuck, is this a stupid situation? And then to have the experience that as you're talking to the person who is affected, that
Mm-hmm.
that person actually understands your dilemma, your predicament, and is not cross with you. I can only assume that this VP of engineering, I don't know if he's still alive today, but if
I
you were
don't
to
know either. I lost track of him.
but if you were to talk to him and you were to ask him, so do you remember that conversation? And if he remembers it, which I imagine he would, because it's not a it's not a daily occurrence. My prediction would be that he would say something like, yeah, in that moment, Bill, your response, the way that you responded made made a world of difference to me. Because if in that moment you had said you're such an asshole, blah blah blah, why didn't you fight for another? Like if there was enough in the budget for you to stay, there would have been enough for two people, or however you could have responded, but you didn't respond that way, right? You were with him and not with him. And that's kind of this paradox where for me, rather than the binary of pizza or not pizza, if I imagine I want to be someone's friend and someone's really reliable friend, I want that person to have the experience before it ever happens that if they ever were to get into a dilemma like this, They could talk to me about it, and I would take it the way that you took it. That for me is almost the bar that I want to get over, where like that's the level of friendship that I want to offer to people, where they don't have to be afraid of talking to me about a really tough decision they have to make where I would be impacted, but where they see a dilemma and for crying out loud, I have to make you be the impacted person here. And the feeling that comes up is it's a very special subset of friendship. It's almost like this camaraderie. I imagine I haven't been in the military,
Right.
but I imagine in the military where you say, okay, we have a unit, 5 people. One guy needs to go to the door and blow himself up so that the other 4 people can go through. You look into the round and one person says, it's going to be me. And it's not because that person is the least of them or whatever. It's just like there's some magical understanding, an alchemical understanding between the people, and one person does it, and they won't be part of the group any longer because they blow themselves up. But they're all friends. And the good thing is then that the 4 people who move on, they carry that person's memory in a very particular way from that moment onward. And that is also part of friendship for me. This kind of commitment to, as much as I can, absorbing the other person's spirit, their spirituality, so that if I were ever asked to do that, I could. I could carry on their spirit for them.
That's really interesting. In no particular order, it actually didn't occur. It was very useful for me because it never occurred to me, his name was Richard, that Richard, that my response to the way he behaved was helpful to him. Never occurred to me, but it almost certainly was. Almost certainly. Yeah, that not occurred to me. As I was just in the moment myself, getting ahead of myself. What am I going to do next, type of thing. But how are the other guys going to do? But it never occurred to me. I was a different guy back then. I was much younger, so maybe it wouldn't have occurred to me the impact that I was having on someone else. Um, yeah. I also like. I wrote a couple notes. I like the word longing, which is the same as
Mhm.
want, but it feels like longing just feels like a better desire, than I want something. To long for something is more, it pulls on my heart more.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and the idea of conflicting values, and maybe I'm going to imagine that you're going to resonate with this, but I'm going to pretend that I'm not going to assume that you do. Um, I get into a situation where I have flashes of like these sci-fi movies where like the bad computer or something is like given an unsolvable problem to immobilize it or whatever, you know, because it's doing something sometimes I feel like I get into a loop like that. Like I'm a robot and I've got the 3 laws and I can't do A without violating C. And you get into a loop and you cannot get out. And this is the conflicting values thing where how can you honor one value, but it's at the expense of another. And
Yep.
I don't know whether it's universal that people have trouble with that. I'm pretty sure I know at least one person who has no trouble with that at all. But I think you know who it is.
If if the color orange
Yeah,
feels
exactly. Right, right. That's why they call them orangutans. Um, so, but um, I think some people, well, clearly, there's again a spectrum. Some people deal with dilemmas better than others, have more of a, you know, it's in the hands of God idea, or whatever what must be must be, or they find a way to do it more easily than some people who
Hmm.
just struggle. I'm a
Hmm.
person who struggles. Um, in fact, I mean, I'm struggling with that a little bit this morning. I mean, Marilyn's in a pattern that's not good for her. And we promised each other to help each other, have good health spans and also, good lives. And, but I haven't found a way of approaching the topic with her. Um, Late last night wasn't good. We were too tired. And I said, okay, you know, let's get some rest, have some breakfast, and talk in the morning. But the morning got away from us. Um, I was 10 minutes late to this meeting. So we didn't have the conversation that I had hoped to broach somehow. And so that condition still like persists. And this comes down to like unsolicited advice, free will, manipulation, all this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I'm not going to infantilize her or whatever. I mean, but so yeah, should my parents had this thing like you can't teach experience. Like I would announce I'm going to do something and they would think it's not a good idea, but they say you can't teach experience, so you go ahead and do it and you'll learn that you shouldn't have or whatever. But I also know that if I told my parents, hey, I'm going down the street tonight to play Russian roulette with my friends, they would have said no,
Hmm.
right? And so there are lines. And at what point do I tell someone, I don't want to interfere with your free will and you're making your own decisions, but I think you're making a bad decision. And here's a suggestion for what a better decision would be. And when do they take that the way it's intended?
Um, I have a couple thoughts coming up, but my question for you is almost, is it okay to take it out of the immediate context with Marilyn and rather talk about it in the more abstract, like with any good friend? Because again, I see so
Sure.
many situational factors that play into this that in a romantic relationship are complicating factors. And I want to start,
I know someone's ignoring a health condition that
yeah, exactly.
they were going to get it diagnosed, and then
Yep,
the
yep.
appointment got bumped, then it never happened. And I
And with that person, if I'm not in a romantic relationship, I think my first pass of approach might be something like, hey, I'm seeing your behavior in this situation, and I have such a hard time to make sense of why you're not doing what I think you could be doing. Would you mind thinking this through with me? Not for me to tell you what to do, but really just so that I understand why you're doing it. I would love to be on the same page as you, because then I feel no longer conflicted. As soon as you can tell me what is going on for you in a way that I can understand, we will be on the same page again. I just don't fucking understand what is going on for you there. So
well,
if you tell me you
they
want
may
to
not
play Russian
understand
roulette,
either. They may not be
no,
withholding it from you. They may not understand either.
exactly. So, but it is an invitation. And of course, they can then say, I don't want to explore it. I want to play Russian roulette because I feel reckless and I don't want to even explore why I feel fucking reckless. I just feel so upset about life right now. I want to just like, and I can't smack you in the head because you're my friend. So I'm going to play Russian roulette because I'm feeling reckless. Okay. I still would hope that you don't do it, but at least now I understand just how crunchy your soul is on the inside right now. And that the only way you feel you can get over this crunchy feeling is by playing Russian roulette. I still think it's a terrible idea, but at least it gives me a little bit of a glimpse of access into what is going on for you. And of course, the other person may not even be able to say that, right? The other person might just be like, yeah. But still, with a friend, that would be my first pass approach. It's just like, I feel disconnected from you because I can't understand you, and I would love to feel connected again. And the way that I believe I would feel connected is if you could explain to me what is going on for you.
Yeah. But you're playing right into my rabbit hole. So here's the next question. Reciprocity. If someone's my friend, what that doesn't necessarily mean I'm their friend.
Hmm.
And then so
Yep.
these conversations aren't the power dynamic isn't equal, if you want to call it that.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
someone has like more to lose, or someone has more power. Someone, is going to be taken more seriously, whatever it is. Even if it's a friendship, it's not
Hmm.
necessarily perfectly balanced, right?
Yep.
So what do you do? What if you do if it's unclear? Oh, I'm interesting. It's interesting. I am getting a text from someone that is on my mind. Is it possible that I'm exerting some kind of mind influence? Anyway, so that's another thing, and for me, it feels like there's a level of friendship where there's no need to talk about the level of friendship and the reciprocity. Therefore, that's all assumed, and you don't actually know. You
Hmm.
don't know for sure. But the fact is, even if it was said out loud, you don't know for sure because words are just words.
Yep.
And my whole philosophy is actions speak louder than words. So like I treat you the way I feel about you. If you don't get it, that's your problem, sort of. I'm not going to attach a word to that. I'm going to take you to the hospital for your kidney biopsy. You don't have to say, "Oh, you're such a good friend." You either get it or
Um,
you don't.
and I'm certainly glad I'm at an edge of understanding something. I haven't like fully understood it yet, but I can now feel that I'm at an edge of understanding. And it's the question, can you ever be friends with someone with whom you have another relationship that binds you to them, even if you were to decide to dissolve the friendship, like a spouse or
Or
like,
an
I mean, you can,
ex-spouse.
but especially like, let's say a blood relative where the blood relation is fairly close, like a parent or a child or a brother, like a sibling or, right, where there is already a force relation going on where the other person, and I may like it or not, but I do think humans have a built-in appreciation that if your brother were to go out and start killing people, you would be implicated by that in some manner, right? It's very difficult to just be like, oh yeah, that's Jeffrey Dahmer, I'm Peter Dahmer, but I don't give a damn. It's just like,
Oh, I share DNA with a serial killer. Yeah.
right? So you cannot just like displace that person and not be impacted. So you are impacted. And I think that's why I'm thinking the same is true for a romantic partner or spouse, right? You just are impacted by their behavior. Whereas with a friend, if that person were to become a mental case, that would be tragic. And you may still feel you want to help this person, but you're not responsible in a kind of like automatic implicated way by whatever they do. It is still their decision, right? And that for me is one difference. So the approach that I mentioned before, I could do literally with a person on the street and say, you are doing something that leaves me feeling very strange about what I'm seeing here. And I would love not to feel that strange. I would love to feel different about it. So, do you mind telling me a little bit about what's going on, right? That approach you can take with anyone, including with a friend.
Hmm.
But part of the reason why I can do that is I'm actually not really impacted in the end in this kind of like moral dilemma way. Whatever they decide is still their decision completely, and they own that. Whereas with a family member, parent, child, sibling, yeah, whatever they do will somehow get back to me whether I want to or not. So there is a different force going on for me in my
Okay.
experience. And
you know,
so with a spouse, yeah, if they have health patterns that really kind of, I feel okay, they're gonna go to their grave much sooner than is necessary. I have an agenda. I just have a fucking agenda. And so I can't be as impartial as I could be with just a friend.
right, right.
And it's just, I can't get out of that, right? It's just that is how I feel. That is how humans feel. I can pretend that it is only a friend, but that's not going to work very, very well, I think. And so, like with a spouse or with someone who is really has this kind of pull on my heartstrings, where there is a longing. And so, just briefly, for me, the word longing actually describes exactly that. It pulls on my heartstrings in two directions, and that is really this process of longing. I'm stretching between two values, and I'm actually growing as I'm doing that. And hopefully my capacity for acting in a way that allows me to square that circle where I'm feeling in the end I can actually cover both bases. That is the longing, or rather the effect of the longing, that I'm getting better at that. Whereas like wanting is just like I want that and I'm going from A to B and then I'm here and then that's fine. Whereas longing is this kind of, God, I wish I could do that, but I can't unless I get larger or bigger or better or whatever.
Uh, my brain's a little full, which is why I took a piece of paper and wrote down a couple things because I find that it overflows sometimes. And I think it's so big, but actually I think the capacity is pretty small. Um, the reason I interjected like ex-spouse thing is I just recently had a visit from my former extended family. My ex-wife and her son and his wife and their kids. And the kids still consider me and will always consider me grandpa. And they don't understand, and they're not in the line of fire for what happened between me and my ex-wife. And so that just occurred to me that for some people that's just a line. Again, like the your friend or not friend, that's like, oh, you get a divorce, you cut off the family. For me, it's never been that way. It's actually sort of the opposite. It can be the opposite. I've gotten close to some of my ex-family members more so after marriages ended. So that just says something more about me, maybe that my life is it's an accumulation of dyads, and my relationship to my granddaughters, each of them individually. I have relationships with them, had nothing to do with my relationship to their grandmother. Um, I also thought of something when you were talking about approaching a stranger on the street, a slight different variation, which might be even scarier in New York City. Um, I had a vision of like sometimes I'll see someone park like in a handicapped parking spot, and they'll go into a store, and I go up to them and I say, "Hey, I noticed you parked in the handicapped parking spot." And they'll get all bent out of shape. I'm not talking about motive here. We're just talking about, you know, and the general response is like, what business is it of yours? And I say, it's everyone's business. And, and the conversation could go many ways, but, there's actually a risk, right? There's a risk that they're going to become physically violent or something, right? I mean, you don't just go up, but I do because it doesn't sit well with me. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to tolerate it unless I let it out in, I think, an appropriate way. But you know, so that's what came to mind when you said you could talk to a stranger about stuff. Um, yeah, um, it's maybe the lack of. I'm circling back. It's maybe the lack of certainty in the reciprocity that makes it hard to raise subjects with people. Like, there's something feels risky. Don't know why. And actually,
if you can think,
your other point, and again, I'm supposed to be like, we're from the planet of logic, right? I'm supposed to be a logical person. In my experience, it's extremely rare that I've ever risked saying something to someone that I'd been holding back on, and then that there'd been a bad consequence. So if my experience has not been negative, I have not put my hand on the stove and gotten burned. Why am I not putting my hand on the stove? I mean, you're just saying, what holds us back when we haven't even had a negative experience or a lot of negative experiences? Like the intellectual side says, you should be able to do that. You've bungee jumped before. Why is this one bothering you? That's an interesting question for me.
um, what comes up as one of the top of shelf explanations that I have, which is itself is a story, is that people have certain stories about what is proper and not proper. Just as, for instance, when you approach someone who has parked in a handicapped parking lot and you then say, hey, this is a handicapped parking lot, just so you know. And that person then responds with, it's none of your fucking business. For you, the appropriate course of action might be, I point out to other people if they do something that really conflicts with the norms in this space, just even for the benefit of everyone. I'll just point it out in as friendly a way as possible, but that is the appropriate thing to do. And other people have this story, unless you do something dangerous or literally kind of like that actively harms people, mind your fucking business. And those two stories, just on the level of story, they conflict, right? They would lead to different actions, behaviors, expectations, what you think someone should tell you, and if they tell you something, whether you have a right to be offended. All of that comes out of those two conflicting stories, right? And it has nothing to do with how people feel about it, right? Feelings don't even come into the equation there. I mean, unless you say something and the other person is then offended, that is then a feeling, but the feeling comes out of the conflict in the stories. But with people specifically, especially if you have the desire to tell people something and then you're not doing it, I don't think it's about a story, right? So that I just wanted I wanted to separate those two things to really understand whether you're talking about just this, oh, why don't people habitually do it, even if they felt that they could emotionally, and why do people feel emotionally hung up not doing it? Those for me are two different reasons. And with the emotional hang up, as much as I still think that having certain stories can play a role, like stories about what's proper, I think it has more to do with being concerned about the worst case. It's a little bit like being afraid of flying. Seeing millions of planes lift up and land won't cure certain people's fear of not wanting to step into this metal tube that is, I can't even say why it's staying up there as a non-engineer, right? Pretending. Like, what the fuck is going on? It's just like a piece of junk, a piece of metal junk in the sky. And that little wing, and I've seen videos where it kind of starts flapping in turbulence. You won't get me into that thing. It's going to break and I'm going to be dead, right? And yeah, it's just an experience. There's just like this simulation experience and focusing on the worst case in that simulation, which from an evolutionary perspective makes a lot of sense, right? You want to not get into the worst case. And so you think about it, what is the worst case? And if you think, oh, in the worst case, if I even say to my friend, by the way, last week when we went out to the restaurant, I ordered one glass of wine and you ordered two glasses of wine, but then we split it Dutch way, right? you know, and then I paid for half of your glass of wine. Actually, I didn't like that. And that was your experience. You didn't like that, but you can't say it. Because the worst case is your friend is just like, oh, you're so stingy, fuck off. Fuck, right? You're stuck.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's tricky, right? If your experience is, if I say even like remotely anything, the other person's going to snap at me and that will be the end of it. Yeah, you'll have to eat that up. And I'm not entirely sure because even there, I think there is still a sort of story going on, but it's not a story that is, or it's a story that's very, very hard to verbalize. And the story is something like, I feel that my safety in relationships or whatever is so important that my attention will always be on the worst case when I simulate the future. And that right, you can write that out as a story and then come to understand that is what my brain is doing. And I'm not choosing to do it precisely because I haven't thought it through, but that is what I'm doing. And I think once you become fully aware of that, it does also become slightly open to your changing that story, right? Because you can then say, wait a minute, let me at least go through the exercise and assign a probability here. And I will now make a conscious commitment. If the probability is less than 1 in 1,000, I will commit to doing it anyway, no matter how I feel about it. You could write this out, right? And then just make a commitment and then do it. You would obviously have to come up with a value that, as you're thinking it through, not being emotionally triggered, that you feel you're happy with. If it's 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million, whatever you say, and then whenever your actual estimate is lower than that, you have then made the commitment, okay, I feel shitty about it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So you could do that, right? It is a story that I think is programmed into your neurobiology, but that doesn't mean you cannot change it. You still can once you become aware that it is a story, that it is a kind of script or a narrative that is really running your biology.
Part of my brain is thinking about how I'm going to reply to that text, but it relates to the conversation. But um, I think that the idea of catastrophizing, which of course none of us does, um, but it kind of, but it dovetails with that value conflict too, where you get to this point where one of the things I find most frustrating in life is when I don't have control over something that's important to me, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes I do have control, but I don't have the will to exercise it because I'm afraid of the consequences, right? That's to be fair. Um,
So in that case, you don't have control over the consequences.
right, right, right. Turning you don't have control into a run-on sentence. Um, yeah. And then you think of, I think about things that this is a terrible analogy, but I'm having trouble shaking it. So you grow up in poverty, imagine, and and you accumulate some kind of wealth, you become a sports star, entrepreneur, whatever, and then there were two kinds of people, right? Those who don't forget that they came from poverty and they become philanthropists. They go back to their old community. They do things to honor their roots, if you like, or the fact that they're lucky and that there's so many people who aren't. And then there are those who just, fly off in their jets and have a great time. And maybe among those, there might be someone, again, maybe separating the world to two kinds of people, those who fear that it's all going to go away. The company's going to collapse and I'm going to be poor again. Okay. And so some people might fear that, and some people might say, well, I've been poor before. It was okay. I'm at peace with that. Okay. So how does this relate to Bill? Because everything Bill says relates to Bill. I've been without friends. I mean, totally without friends as a child. And I've been and certainly I've had periods of my life when I've been what I would call coasting, or some other people would call surviving, where I didn't really have fulfilling relationship, but I was okay. Outward appearances anyway, and maybe even I thought it was okay. Just like best way to deal with it is to not obsess about it or think about it or want or long for more. Didn't long for more, because longing for more would be disappointing because I wouldn't get it. At least I didn't think I would get it. I'd be clear about that too, right? So
United Home Experts.
let me take this quick because it's got to do with my house. Yeah, house stuff. Trying to get a quote out of my guys to do some exterior carpentry, and it's kind of dicey. Um, so I know I was talking about myself. Um, yeah, why don't we just? But that would be totally further on the autistic scale, like the whole say everything, total honesty thing that we know doesn't really work in the real world. Um, you do have to filter stuff a bit. Choose your battles, pick how you approach things.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm breaking the fourth wall now by saying um I've almost felt like, given that you muted, and unless you said something really, I'm not a lip reader, so I can't say what you said. But if you think you didn't say anything too private, I would almost leave everything in the recording in the end, because
Oh, I didn't
this
think
is
I didn't think discussion on the side with my home contractor was relevant, so I just didn't
no,
want.
it's not about relevance, but when you said about saying everything all the time, and you said it's a dicey negotiation, or it's a little tricky. And clearly the guy who wants to come for the carpentry, right? You wouldn't consider him as a friend, I imagine.
No.
And but I've had this conversation via text message with a friend the other day, Monday, And then yesterday I posted this on my Substack where I described what he said. He thinks like, yeah, that sounds dangerous to him, where he said like, there be dragons, but I think for you that's utopia. And I tried to express, so what is the utopia for me? What are the dragons that I actually feel would be great if I could not slay them, but like get a handle of? And if I imagine that I could speak to the guy of a service that I want to come into my apartment and let's say fix the dishwasher, but then in the conversation, it really becomes clear to me this is a tough one. It's a tough cookie. But how can I still approach this person as though it is a difficult friend of mine, where I don't necessarily have to write this person off as like, yeah, it's an asshole. But we don't have to go down that path. But at least there's almost like some juice in that for me in and of itself, which is, and I used that image last night. I had a conversation with some people, and at the end we had, as we were like just chilling out, I said, yeah, if I imagine, for instance, I find out my neighbor is actually a serial killer. Can I have a conversation with that person about that where they're not likely to kill me and where they're at least considering changing what they're doing and whatever, right? So that's the extreme, extreme, extreme case, I would say. We're not friends. They're doing something that I really don't like. I have a problem with it. They're very likely to be offended by if I bring it up. And I still want them to consider it. And so in this case, with the carpentry guy, he's not a serial killer, but he's doing something that
we know of.
that pisses you off, which is like his negotiating tactics might be something like, well, if you don't like it, I'll just like go to the next house or whatever he might have said, right? It's just like something that set you off. And still for me, the premise is roughly this longing. The longing is, does it have to end this way? Does it have to be this way? Or do I now have to strong arm him and say like, well, I'm on the city council, and if you don't come to my house and do it for half price now, I'll make sure you'll never get a job in this goddamn town ever again. Right? So I could also try to take out the big guns and shoot back. But is that the path that I want to go down on in life with people? Right? They show to me this kind of attitude of like, oh, I think I'm stronger than you. Look at this baby. You don't stand a chance, so you better do what I say. You better give me those 1,000 extra bucks, because otherwise I'm not gonna come to your house. See, sir? And of course, I can then try to flex my own muscles. But is that the way that I want to treat people? And it's for me a very, very general question. It's not a question even within a friendship, but it's really about, can I use what I'm learning about friendship to treat everyone differently? And if for a moment I just pretend, no, the guy at the carpentry and I, we are actually best friends. He just doesn't know it yet. How would I then talk to that guy?
Yeah.
Because that's also just, it's just a story. I just have a story in my mind that's either, oh, that's an asshole, or that's my best friend. And depending on that story, my behavior to this person will change dramatically.
It's interesting listening to you, and I would definitely say it's definitely a story because you don't have it right, but which is fine. It's a story. It's interesting. Um,
Exactly.
um, and I don't think it's important to correct it. So, Yeah, you also, what else? You said something. Oh, you like, yeah. So I don't know what word to attach. I don't know what word to attach. So the whole like, you're actually my friend and you don't know it yet thing is just kind of, you could substitute a couple things. First, you could substitute something, you substitute different things for friends. So friend, you know, so any place on the spectrum, right? You just, you're my soulmate and you don't know it yet. Okay. Um, but also there's some sort of arrogance to like, you don't know it yet. Maybe they do know it. Okay. Maybe there's just a lack of communication or coyness, or it doesn't seem appropriate. We're not going there yet, whatever, you know? And so I found that whole sentence really juicy. Um, the whole concept. Um, and my philosophy, if you like, is I don't worry about it. I try not to worry about it. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, it is what it is. It's a trite thing to say. Um, and if I'm really on the right wavelength with this person, or enough so that it'll it things will play out the way they ought to, or things will be okay. So don't agonize over it.
And oh, Bill, it's like something is now coming up for me, which for me would be juicy, but it's because it's like, what is the limit of friendship that I actually feel I want to communicate as a boundary? Because that I think part of the issue that I'm having, that my friend on Monday pointed out to me, where he said like, yeah, you that's utopia. No, he didn't say you're an idiot, but he said like your story is too rosy-eyed, it's too naive, and I agree with him. It is. At this point, it is. And what I need in that story, at least, and there may be other things that I still need, but at least it would be something where I have very clear for myself, here is the limit of friendship. And there are domains in which I think I could say that. So let's say I have someone who's my best friend. We have a great time. We're at it for like 12 years. And at one point, unbeknownst to me, the guy develops a gambling addiction, a drug habit, whatever. I don't know about it yet. But he somehow gets access to my bank accounts. I don't know, like he figures out, I don't know, something. And then he plunders all of my resources. Motherfucker. I cannot just pretend this person is just like, oh, the friendship is just like, it's still going great. That would be not only foolish, it would just like be a complete rejection of reality. It's just like, whatever happened here, it needs addressing. And if we don't address this in some meaningful way, and here's the thing, if I were to figure out, okay, now that this has happened, you plundered my bank account, there is a redemptive arc, but it's a very, very, the eye of the needle is really, really small, dude. I mean, I don't know if you can fit through that one, but like, I still don't want to say it's zero, but it's very, very fucking tight, dude. And if you don't go through there, and it's not so much it's not a threat, but it's just like the reality of how reality works. If you don't happen to go through that eye of the needle, we can't be friends anymore. And it's not about me getting the money back, but it's
Right.
about you understanding that what you did makes it impossible for us to continue until you have redeemed yourself. And I think it is really the arc of like what sinning and redemption in the religious context means, right? So, and for me to become very clear, at least, first of all, what would it be that I would consider a sin to the extent that a friendship is at the very least on hold. And what would redemption look like? Because I think once those things have become clear enough for me, then I think I can treat the guy from the carpentry as a friend. Because I can then communicate. I want to treat you not like my best friend, but like a friend. I want to treat you with all of the things that I bestow on my friends, respect and patience and this and the other thing. But here's the thing, that if you do that, that's off the table until you redeem yourself, which would look like this, right? I can actually communicate that to people, which at the moment I wouldn't be able to do because I don't even know what that would look like. Because I don't think it's as easy as like, here's the 10 commandments and here's how you pray your sins away. No. Like I'm not the old dude in the sky with whom you can do that. That's a different contract. The contract with me, the contract of friendship, looks like this. Here's the limit. And if you cross that line, then friendship is no longer available. And it's not a threat. It's just like, this is the reality of friendship. But if you then realize being in the desert of no friendship is something that you don't like, here's the thing that you can then do, and then we figure it out again. And if I can communicate those two things, not even to the other person, but even internally for me well enough, yeah, then I can be probably everyone's friend, or at least I can offer it to everyone. Because I can make it very clear what it would take.
So this is a spoiler alert. This is a rhetorical question. You think that you could be a friend to any person in the world?
If so, let's already assume they have already done something before I get to know them that, according to what I would say are my principles of friendship, that I haven't discovered yet, right? So I'm not saying that I have them, but I think that there are principles that are discoverable, where if I plug them into a script, a story, where I either feel, yes, I can be this person's friend, or I can't be this person's friend. And my feeling will just reveal that to me as I plug these things into the story. I
Okay, so
haven't discovered them
there are
yet.
people that you can't be a friend with.
No, until they would be willing to redeem themselves.
Oh, redeem. Okay, okay. Um, so
But
what's the
so be
bound?
clear.
What limits friendship there then? Just pick any two people, yourself and someone else.
Oh,
What
surely.
limits what makes the friendship not be infinitely close? I mean, what limits friendship?
Well, certainly the other person being saying, I'm not interested in the friendship to yours. Yeah, that is just like, okay, if you don't even are, if you're not even interested in that, there's not even anything I could do. It's just
Let's
like
say
that.
they are. Let's say they are.
They are interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it would be, I guess, their ability to actually go through the redemptive process. If currently the situation is, yeah, like you're telling me you would want to be friends, but I have such a hard time of seeing us being friends the way that things are currently, and there's at least a few things that I would have to see from you. And it's not just saying that you want to be friends. That isn't enough. And now one of the important things is, because I cannot just say it's like XYZ, here's the rule book, because it's not a religious contract. It's not a doctrinal contract. It's not a dogmatic contract. It is a contract that would depend on the other person's ability almost for themselves to come up with, here's the moral standards that I think I can live up to, that I want to live up to, that I will do my darndest to live up to, that I want your help to live up to. I know I've been a criminal all my life, and I hate it. I hate myself. And I want to be better. And I want to be better in this and this and this and this way. And I want to be your friend, and I want you to help me doing that. And then making the experience, wow, they're actually like, they're asking me for my help, and they're taking me up on it. that I think would be a good start.
So suddenly occurs to me that this is your meeting, but I'm doing the interviewing. You hit on, I'm going to expound a little bit on my semantic distinction or thoughts. Ability and capacity, to do something. Some people just, there's a limit.
Mhm.
I, for example, one of my favorite examples maybe is I love to sing, but
Mhm.
my voice might not be that great. And even with a lot of voice coaching, there will be a maximum, ability to sing, right?
Mhm.
Just couldn't go beyond a certain point.
Mhm.
And I think we all have limits to our capacity in all measures of things. And in my opinion, this is sort of can be a difficult concept, and it's something that ultimately happened between me and my ex-wife. She simply did not have the capability to understand me at the level that I needed to be understood. Just didn't have the ability. And no amount of desire to have it or training is going to change that. I had no doubt that she desired it. Okay. We were married. Just couldn't get past that point. Right. So that's one boundary, if you like, to a deepening of a relationship. It reaches some capacity limit on one or both of the people. Okay. The other limiting factor in my model are boundaries, are social conventions and other things that just keep you constrained in some way. And time, for example, is a limit. You only have a certain amount of time. So what are your priorities? Is it more important for you to advance your career than to spend an evening, talking about current affairs, whatever it is? I mean, there are limited resources. That's also a capacity problem in a way, but there are also boundaries, right? You have a husband, there are boundaries that you have with other people, okay? There's places you're not going to go because there's a boundary. So there are boundaries. They're both frustrating to me. That people have maybe limited capability. There aren't a lot of people who speak the language of our planet, so I have trouble finding people to converse with. And there are boundaries. Sometimes there's people who can, but they have limited amount of time or other things constraining them. So that's one thing to chew on. The other is in my mind at the moment, because this, I don't know if it's artificial or how I'm concerned that I want to make an observation. You might make the observation, I think you're drinking too much, right? But I'm concerned that the way the observation is going to land, it's going to seem like an ultimatum. Like, I think you're drinking too much and I can't have anything to do with you, if you're going to be drunk or if you're going to drink and then drive. It's intolerable to me that you do that. You put other people's lives at risk. Whatever it is, however you put it, it could also be registering as an ultimatum. That is, if you don't change your behavior, if you don't fix this, there's a severe consequence.
And you probably have more, but I want to at least put a pin in that, what I want to talk about.
Right. Well, we could run with that one or go back to the boundary thing. I just that's part of my quandary today. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
I'm at a place with my relationship with Marilyn that I like. I want more. I long for more,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to put what I have at risk by
Mm-hmm.
declaring what might appear to be an ultimatum.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And I think all of these are actually interrelated because what your ultimatum might be, and it might be, so for instance, someone wants to do a rock climbing with you. They want to go bouldering with you. And your body is just no longer in a state where you want to, like, it's just okay. But they say, well, if you loved me, we would go bouldering at least once a week. Okay, dude, I mean, like, look at me. That is a fucking ultimatum I have to set on you. It's like, if you insist on bouldering, we're done. And it's not that I don't love you, but like, look at me. What you're asking is not realistic. It's just a physical limitation of this meat and water and bones bag that I'm carrying around. It's not going to happen unless you want to kill me. Is that what you want? Right. So, and I'm not even saying to say it that way, but at least
sure,
there's
sure.
just a physical limitation there. And it is the capacity which leads you to the boundary that you then communicate as a potential ultimatum. But if you say, I really want to get up at 8 in the morning and you always sleep until 9:30, what the heck? If you can't get up at 8 in the morning, we're finished. That to me sounds like a tad different because why exactly can't you sleep until 9:30? Is your body so frail that if you don't get up at 8, you die? Right? So I think your capacity, your experience of your capacity that leads you to the desire of setting a boundary and potentially communicating that as an ultimatum is your story. And sometimes your story tracks with reality. Your body really can't go bouldering anymore. But sometimes your story, I want the other person to do this, and if they don't, we're done. That is just your story. And you could just change your fucking story. Come on, Bill, grow up. That is just like your inflexibility there. And no one other than your own smarts can tell you that. Am I imposing that on as a stupid condition on the other person, or is really my body here at stake? What is this? And so if you have this desire to communicate something to your partner where you feel, yeah, it could come across as an ultimatum, at least be very, very clear of what is the capacity that I see is being reached here, and is that real, or is that just in my imagination? So, regardless of how you communicate that, at least get very clear so that you know how to communicate about it. Because even if it is just a preference, I want fucking strawberries twice a week. I won't die if I don't get them, but I want them. At least know what is it actually that you're communicating here. Okay, so let's assume it is a preference. Let's assume it is not your body that can't do bouldering. I have a preference for strawberries twice a week, and I really want it. Okay. So, my dear partner, I've communicated to you for the last 6 months. I'm into strawberries. I fucking love strawberries. And each time when it's time for dessert, you give me this stupid cherry pie. What the fuck? Like, I want to at least understand where am I communicating so poorly that you don't understand my strawberry preferences? Or you haven't told me that you're allergic to strawberries. What the fuck is going on here? And again, you can say that nicely, but I think that's the message, right? But it is very clear it is a fucking preference. I'm not gonna die without strawberries, but I need at least to understand why don't I get my strawberries? And I think that's part of a friendship where you disclose to the other person your preferences as preferences and then elicit from the other person, why can't I get my preference here? And in a friendly enough way, with less expletives.
I had a number of thoughts. One of them was, you might state something clearly, the other person might not perceive it as a clear statement.
Yeah,
Okay,
which
so
is why I'm saying I'm still struggling with the learning to communicate.
right. This and the tail end, I lost something in the middle because I didn't take notes. And you know this of me, I've told you. So this person who just texted me, they know, absolutely know. I've told them multiple times that I prefer to hear the voice, the sound of the voice, okay? A phone call. And I even sent them an audio clip making what they would call an ask. I would ask that you occasionally send me an audio clip rather than a text because I would like to hear the sound of your voice, okay? These things have never come to pass.
Mhm.
Does this person care less for me? No. They have,
Now,
uh,
so let's make it about you and me, Bill,
okay,
because the same applies between you and me. So, and my request, if you now bring this up with me, so Jochen, like the last 6 messages that you sent text messages. I wish 2 of them would have been audio messages. Okay, and my response to you would then be, as a, I hope not too immature, but like somewhere in the middle, slightly matured person. Cured, matured,
well,
mature,
if we're going to
mature
be
person.
brothers, you have to be as immature as me.
Okay. But I would then ask, okay, Bill, next time I'm going to send you a text, can you do me a favor? Just send back as an audio clip, please, with a smiley face. Because I just like, you are the only person on the world, on the planet that I know who has that preference. And I'm just like, for whatever fucking reason, it is just so outside of my realm of habitual thought, of habitual experience. Just like if I had to remember, you're the only person I know who can see 4 primary colors. You see red, blue, green,
Yellow.
yellow. No, exactly. So you see 4 primary colors. You have like a 4th type of cone. No fucking clue how your brain does it. And each time when I see you, I forget that you can do that. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. So remind me. You sent me a picture that is the best picture for you. And I'm like, what is Bill talking about? And then remind me, oh, Bill is the guy who can see 4 primary colors. Okay, I sent you a text. You're upset. Has he forgotten again? Yes, I have. So remind me, hey, as an audio message, please. And then I will, because you're my friend.
Yeah, but
But I will not.
here's the trade-off. Okay, again, boundary,
Yep, yep,
spectrum.
yep.
At what point does it become nagging? You see?
Oh, I can tell you that. But that is why I'm telling you in this situation, I would invite you to nag me. I would give you permission to nag me because I can tell, oh, this is important for Bill. I'm not doing it. Each time when he reminds me, I wish I did it, but I can't remember. Please nag me. Right? So that for me is a fairly simple negotiation. And of course, there might be people who don't like to be nagged. Yeah. For those people, I would say, okay, make a fucking decision. Either you remember or I can nag you. Right? Again,
Oh, really? That's an ultimatum.
well, and I would say part of a friendship is either that you have some, and it has a little bit to do with respect, right? The respect for, if, especially if you want to be a close friend of mine, I long for the experience that you know some of my important preferences. And if, for instance, my preference for voice message is like, of all my preferences that I want you to know about me, that's number 3. I want you to know about me, I'm a pacifist. I want you to know about me, I like vanilla. And I want you to know about me that I like voice messages. Forget everything
Vanilla
else,
on your chocolate cake?
right? So those 3 things, remember them about me. And then if the other person says, yeah, but I'm forgetful. Okay, can I nag you? No, I don't like to be nagged. Motherfucker, you're not making this easy. And at least I think I'm then, it's not that I'm entitled to say that, but dude, you can't remember anything about me. And each time I remind you, you're upset. I think we can't be friends. And it's just like, it's almost like by definition of what friendship is. It's not that I don't want to be friends, but like, I don't know how we could be friends. You can't remember shit about me, and I can't remind you either. That's tough. And not because I don't want to be friends. So it's just like it's just like realistically tough. And so for me, that at least it's where I think the boundary of friendship is. But most people can remember loads of stuff about me. So I don't that is typically not a cliff or it's not a cliff that I feel particularly at risk of falling down off. I haven't yet met
Right.
people where I really feel they have such a hard time remembering my preferences that and would then freak out if I remind them.
Yeah. Hmm. So,
But you could actually check it out, right? You could also, rather than having that person make the invitation, you could ask them, hey, you sent me this text, and now that I mention it, I assume you know my preference. Would it be okay? Not every text message you send, because I don't want to be an asshole either. After 4, 5, 6 messages I get from you that are text messages, would it be okay if I just remind you, and maybe if you have a minute, you just send it again as an audio message? You can ask that question. And really, I wouldn't even know if that person wants to be your friend. It is difficult for me to imagine that they would say, fuck off. Like, what would precipitate that response? I'm not entirely sure. So, like, I don't know whether you've ever heard about nonviolent communication, but there's this concept that the guy
no,
who
I
put
think
this
violence is
together,
always necessary.
force is necessary. Yes,
Okay.
you have to express your preferences strongly enough in the world for other people to register them. And that's a force, right? You have to express your preferences strongly enough. And that's precisely what the guy said. You have to be what he called dogging for your needs. You have to be your own advocate. Because if you don't tell people what you want, or rather, you don't tell them in a way where they can actually act on it because they forget, right? And if you then don't remind them, and you carry that as a weight on your shoulders, as like, they don't want to be my friend, it's kind of on you. So you have to express your preferences strongly enough for other people to have a chance to register them with their given capacity.
Hmm.
And quite honestly, after expressing all of this, like sometimes people tell me, oh, Jochen, it's so amazing. You can be friends with everyone. And I'm like, well, I want to push it even further, but like, at least most people I can be friends with, maybe because I have already learned to express my preferences strongly enough in a friendly enough manner so that most people actually can get along with that.
You know, you're probably following the thread of what I said, but this sentence says, still getting over my jet lag, which is probably just another way of saying still recovering from my busy year, exclamation point. So this comes down to picking battles too,
It does. It
and
does.
whether
It does.
I'm a, you know, Enneagrams, I'm a 2, I'm a helper. Um, but kind of got the strong wing on the 1. But so in my priorities, is it more important for me to serve others or to be served? Okay. Doesn't mean I don't have needs and they aren't important, but you know, when in the balance of things, right? So for example, if I ask permission, is it okay to nag you about your failure to follow through on your health appointments? That for me in this situation is a higher priority than is it okay for me to nag you about the fact that you almost never call? Okay. And it's like, pick your battles type of thing. What
Hmm.
hill do you want to die on?
Hmm.
Not you couldn't do both, but one is more important than the other to me.
Hmm.
Not that I don't complain about it, and not that it doesn't matter to me, but its priority is not as high in my mind.
Well, I just want to say, and this is almost comes out of, it's not management school, but it's like a thing where if you get into the same kind of situation repeatedly, more than a handful of times, it probably already should suggest to your consciousness you want to have a general pattern solution for that, right? Similarly, if you always have to reply to a certain email and at some point you don't have a boilerplate for that reply, but you have to write 5 paragraphs 20 times, at some point you should have figured out, no matter how important it feels,
Right.
I should just have a template,
Yeah, I
right?
do.
And so if you are, and you said like with, for instance, with Marilyn or like, with other people, if you feel, oh, this is coming up again and again and again, almost like unimportant of how important you feel it is, maybe it should just suggest to you, no, this I do want to figure this out.
Yeah,
Just by the frequency in which that occurs to you as a problem.
right.
Because in my experience, the 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 experience, oh, this isn't an important problem, that typically comes actually out of the fear of what would happen if you addressed it. So the experience of like, oh, it's such a minor problem, that's more like some part of your mind lying to you. It wants to soften the blow. It doesn't want you to feel, oh my goodness, what would happen if I addressed it? And instead you think, oh, it's not a big problem.
Well, but
But
it also comes from experience. That is, in my life, many people have received that ask, and very few have answered the call. And so it's like, okay, this is just the way people on this planet are. You ask for this thing, and they're unable to do it.
Mhm.
They don't can't even articulate why.
Yeah, and I think part of it for me has to do with how how easy it is for me to represent a preference. And again, food preferences, I think about people I can represent easily because I have food preferences. And so I can literally use my own mental map of food items and place any person that I know onto the same map as like, oh, that person is here. But let's say someone has preferences about which type of cravat to wear. That might be much, much harder for me to ever learn because I don't have any fucking cravats. I mean, maybe 3 for funerals, red, blue, and black, and we're done, right? And if then someone says like,
You only need one. They're only going to bury you with one.
no, but anyway, all I'm saying is there are domains of preferences that I have so little experience with, I just don't have a fucking map at all. And to then have someone come to me and say, please place me there on that map. I was like, what fucking map are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that person I would then ask, if this is an important preference for you, please kindly remind me of that preferences every once in a while because I have such a hard time putting that on any map. I don't have a map there.
Well, right. This could be this could be a capacity problem. That is,
Yes.
most of us, all of us, eat food, and I think pretty much everyone knows what the things have taste and have food preferences, and like the taste of some things, dislike the taste of others. So if I tell you that I share, your love of chocolate cake, we understand. We have an understanding there already. I think that the people I deal with, everybody, that none of them seems to have the capacity to understand what it tastes like to me to
To hear
hear
a
their
voice.
voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
They don't know how
literally,
I'm missing just that. Just give me an ice cream cone once a month,
but Bill, I'm pretty sure if you imagine you had only blind friends and you see a Gauguin, you see a Rembrandt, you see a Vermeer, and you try to express to people the difference between them, what do you like? What are you the fuck talking about?
Right.
And it's a capacity problem. I agree. And so in that case, I think you have to remind people, oh yeah, we're now in a Rembrandt exhibit, and I'm really enjoying myself because they still don't know what you're talking about. They can abstractly represent that you have a preference experience, but they can't represent the experience. They just can't. And so I think in that sense, if you understand that they lack the capacity, anyone who I believe that I'm testing this out as I'm talking about it. I believe anyone who self-declares they want to be your friend will be okay with you reminding them of the difference in capacity. They will be okay with that.
I'm sure you're right.
Especially if you don't make it a moral judgment like, why do you lack this capacity? You're such an idiot.
But it also becomes an optimization problem. That is, if I
It
have
is.
if I have 5 minutes to talk to someone, am I going to spend it talking about something that is not going to have any impact? Or am I going to talk about something impactful? I'm going to choose the impactful thing. I've learned that there's no impact. There is just, it's not that they don't hear, it
But
just,
by the way, you can actually ask people, and you know what? I'm going to do that right now. It's like I haven't considered this, but like seriously, Bill, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I'm going to open your contact in my phone right now, and I'm going to put the word audio between your first and last name in my contact, so that each fucking time I want to text you, it will say, "Do you want to text Bill Audio Claff?" Or do you want to send a voice message? And it like because yes, I still lack the capacity, but my phone doesn't. My phone remembers it. No, it's like it is such an easy way, right? I'm gonna say Bill. Oh, doesn't show.
I see it.
Bill
Yeah.
Bill Audio Claff. Okay, wonderful. I think this is easier. And so each time when I'm going to text you now, do I have to blur your number in the end? I hope it was too short anyway. I'm going to figure something out.
I don't know that I saw the number. I saw it on just the name. That's fine.
I'll check it. But each time I'm going to now be in the predicament of, oh yeah, let me text Bill. It will literally in my list of text messages say Bill Audio Claff. And so like if I then don't send you an audio message every third, fourth, fifth message, maybe I am an asshole.
Time will tell.
Yeah, no, exactly. Time will tell, and then let's see what your redemptive requests of me will be.
Oh, so is it hot down in New York City? It's pretty hot up here.
Um, Outside we have like 95,
Yeah, I'm sure it's 90
94.
something and not by the thermometer, but yeah. I I was late because I was watering. Um, live on a 2 acre lot. About 3/4 of an acre of it is actually got, plants or landscaping. And things look stressed yesterday, and I know objectively that it's better to water first thing in the morning than the middle of the day. Um, so I was watering. I was running behind schedule because so I had announced my intention to do that this last night to Marilyn, so she'd
Mhm.
know what the morning was going to be. I woke up early, and I looked over and she's sleeping. And I just know she doesn't get enough sleep. And I don't want to wake her up. And I'm enjoying watching her sleep. And so I just like stay there for another hour or hour and a half or whatever, till she wakes up. Should have been out, you know, should have been out watering. The
Mhm.
objective, cold decision would have been water first thing in the morning. But I didn't.
Mhm.
Um, but then I was not rewarded for my did not have my delayed gratification after she woke up. Instead of just some some good morning hugs and then get going on the day, she grabs her phone and she like opens up the BBC because she wants to read today's news. I was not happy with that, and so I decided, what the heck. So I got dressed and I went out and did the watering. And by the and I got started later, an hour and a half later than I might have. In the interim, she got up and had her own espresso, which I normally make for her, but I was outside watering. And by the time I got in, it was on the verge of our Zoom meeting, and I had enough time to make her some toast and give her a little bit of a breakfast and a send off. But we also didn't have the talk that I hoped we'd had this morning.
Mhm.
So
I had a thought and I just want to mention it. Have you ever heard the name Paul Watzlawick?
no, I don't believe that I have.
Okay. So he was a communication researcher. No, it's like I butcher this. What does it say in his biography? Family therapist, psychologist, communication theorist, and philosopher. And maybe I told you that story. It's like it's a fictional story, right? So a guy
So
wants
they
to hang
say.
up a guy wants to hang up a picture frame in his house, but can't find a hammer. And it's like, oh, but I think my neighbor has one. So he leaves his house, walks over to the neighbor, and while he's walking to the neighbor's home door, he starts having all these kind of weird thoughts. And like, oh yeah, like last week I borrowed this thing, and my neighbor had to ask me to get it back if I now want the hammer. Oh, but, and, he keeps having these thoughts, and it's he gets down the rabbit hole. He is already at the door. He has knocked at the door. And he keeps still having these kind of thoughts that get wilder and wilder, where he thinks at some point, yeah, maybe the neighbor won't like me at all if I do this. The door opens, the neighbor smiles at him, and the guy says, like, you know what? Keep your fucking hammer, you idiot. And that's the problem, right? And so I think I would really recommend, and I can try to look up like some presentations that this guy has given. The difficulty that happens when you make too many assumptions about another person's experience with your experience and their experience with your experience and your experience with their experience of your experience and whatever. And if you get into this cabinet of mirrors and then you treat the other person like the thing that you see in that cabinet, bad move all round. Really bad move, right? Because you're projecting onto the other person something that didn't ever occur to them. So with these kinds of situations, I would just like tell people, just get clear of what your projection is and what is actually what you can really ascertain is going on for the other person.
Yep. So anyway,
So, and sorry
yep.
for interrupting you, but
No. My mind's already like, there are boundaries on what I'm going to do the rest of the day, and part of them have to do with the fact that it's so hot out. I'm not going to go out and do
yep,
yard work, for
yep.
example, any more yard work than I already did. So
Um,
that's how my mind got there.
there's still one aspect in what you shared about like your morning that I think is really important, and this is, and oh my goodness, Bill, this is one of the things I struggle with the most in life. So I think that's why in a way, it's even triggering. How do I disclose to other people preference that I have that I'm almost ashamed of having?
Hmm.
When you wake up and then you pick up your phone and read the BBC News, that hurts me. But I cannot even justify bringing that up with you because it's fucking normal human behavior, right? You're not doing
Oh,
anything wrong. How could I ever even
oh, it's
say that?
definitely wrong. Don't pussyfoot around it. Definitely wrong. So here, the Bill doesn't say that. Bill this evening probably says, um, when you came, back to bed this morning, I was hoping we would snuggle some, but you just picked up your phone and read the news. So I started going about my morning. And I'm not going to read any more into it. Now, like I missed this, or you shouldn't have. That just like this is what I wanted or expected. This is what happened.
And
No, that's it.
I'm not doing it, right? But I think, and I want to experiment with this more because I'm not doing it yet. But I imagine if I can disclose to the other people what my longing is in that moment,
Mhm.
that might work.
Right. That's what I'm kind of doing, trying to do.
But really as a longing, like, oh, in that moment, what would have made I I was watching you for an hour and a half because it was so beautiful seeing you asleep. And there was such a longing in me that once you wake up, we would snuggle for a minute. And it didn't happen, and that's okay. But I want you to know that I had that longing. And you didn't do anything.
I'm going to admit that that's okay.
No, exactly. Because I
Seriously.
didn't even share that. I didn't even share that with you, right? But I'm telling you now,
Mhm.
so that you know that is what my heart burns for. So you didn't do anything wrong. And I'm not even asking you to do it tomorrow, but I want you to know what my heart burns for.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, we're just not in this, we're stupidly not in the habit of sharing that with people, especially with people where we would have a reasonable expectation if they know that about me and they have the capacity to represent it, they might be very well motivated to speak to that longing on occasion.
Right.
Not every day. I mean, you don't want to have a 5-course menu with dessert every day. You're going to get opulent and fat, and it's not good for you. But once a week, once a month, to go out and eat to your heart's content, yes, please. Right? So I think a longing is not something where I want the other person to then start catering to that longing in a way where I'm like oversaturated.
Right. So, uh-oh. This is you heard it, right? This is probably from Spain. Let me guess. Yeah.
You're a good guesser, Bill. And we spoke for over 2 hours already. So maybe at some point we also need to bring this to a close for me to do my trade-offs.
Okay. So what I'm surprisingly busy. So I'm supposed to call Marilyn after the Zoom meeting because she does want to hear the sound of my voice, I assume, but I didn't ask her why. I'm supposed to call her. The contractor is going to call me after he meets with his next client. Just FYI, I like this guy. We're almost friends. We've done a lot of business together. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars. He's the head of the company. He's struggling with this estimate because it's not obvious to him what's on inside this wall. And he doesn't want to lowball it, but we do change orders all the time. So I'm not sure what his hesitation really is. Like, oh, okay, start with X and you rip it open, you find this other issue, we write up a change order and we increase it. So I'm not sure. We have to discuss why he's being so hesitant about that. And this guy from Spain has sent me camera data that needs analyzing. And we may have a Zoom meeting because he wants to learn how to analyze it himself. So those are some of the things that are on my radar
And
for the next few hours.
it's amazing that you brought this up because obviously now that I'm on the board of our condo, I know what change orders are. It's actually the first time that I came across the term in this very specific manner of a contractor letting you know that the initial estimate needed an update. But how rich that of a topic for me might be at some point to think about that in the context of a friendship. We've had a unspoken contract as friends, but as we both age, clearly the thing has to evolve. So sooner or later, we will have to have a change order conversation here. Similarly, if you get from someone from like ex-partner to rekindling to repartner, right? So like, okay, what is changing here? And again, I can already tell I would be struggling with that conversation. Because each time I'm having negotiated a contract, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. We've got a contract here. I don't want to open up that barrel again. Maybe. And again, I think it has to do with the capacity, not so much of representation, but of behavioral skill. Do I trust my own ability to not being shortchanged in that change order negotiation? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They feel once they have it settled, they want to keep it that way because, oh, this is a safe contract. I know what I'm doing. That person's doing that. Don't you dare change it. But that's just not reality because change orders happen all the time, as you said. And so that, like, if we have a round number 2 at some point, that might be a fascinating topic to explore. How to do change orders within friendships.
Sounds good. Well, I enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
So,
And Bill, I'll send you the recording for review, but I can already tell you as part of that, I will create, some text representation of what we talked about. And as I'm going to do that, I will have again flashlight moments, flashbulb moments. So thank you very, very much. This was fantastic.
yeah, okay. Well, I'll hear from you later.
Indeed. Until then, bye
All
bye.
right.